Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. This is the fourth book in the Wheel of Time series, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Reading. This book was published in 1992. It is the first book in the series that didn't come out in 1990. I guess the first three must have all come out in one giant batch, and I can't wait to start talking about it. So if you want to read this series, I recommend that you go do that. I will leave links to my summaries and reviews of all the books in the video description, and then when you're done, you can come back and hear my opinions. So the biggest thing I noticed about this book is that I'm starting to feel much more comfortable in the world. We're on the fourth book in the series, and it's starting to feel like a real place. I'm starting to want to dress like the characters and find decorations that kind of feel like they would live in the world. As you can see, I have the golden dragons on my arms, and this is my attempt at wearing a shufa. The series has just been going on long enough that I'm starting to really enjoy the world and feel at home in it. It reminds me of how I feel about Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books, and I love it when a book starts to become part of my life like that. Alright, so these books are getting ridiculously long. It's crazy how many pages of notes I needed just to keep track of the characters and plot events in this book. So the thing that annoyed me most about this book was the relationships. I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that when any character is in the middle of a relationship in this series, I'm not going to like them very much because the relationships are just not very healthy. They're all very dramatic, and it seems like the people who are in them don't have any respect for each other, or don't know how to treat each other with kindness, and definitely do not know how to communicate with each other. Nynaeve and Lan have been one of my favorite couples throughout this series, and now in this book it's getting weirder because Lan still refuses to actually say he's in a relationship with Nynaeve, even though he's clearly in love with her. But in this book, he did this thing where he grabbed her and started kissing her, and she didn't want him to. So she was kicking and screaming and fighting, but in the end she ended up just melting him into his arms, because I guess that's what she really wanted all along. She wanted him to just kiss her against her will and hold her down while she kicked and screamed and fought, and he knew that, so I guess they're in tune with each other somehow, and they both enjoyed the experience, but that is sexual assault, not romance. It was just such a terrible example to set, and not at all how a healthy, happy relationship should work. And that's sad because they were such a cute couple before they actually got together. In the first book, when they were just kind of thinking about dating, they seemed so great together. And then from the moment they've gotten together, they've been manipulative and now physically abusive, and it's just not okay. Egwene and Rand are finally over, which is wonderful. Their relationship has seemed so inconsistent to me. It started out in the first book, it felt like they were both kind of flirting with each other and liked the idea of dating each other, but they hadn't really gotten that far yet. And then starting at about the second book, they talked like they were basically betrothed and had always known they'd get married. And now they've just broken up and neither of them cares at all about it, so it's like they never had any feelings for each other at all. And it just feels like the author couldn't decide how they felt about each other and kept changing their dynamic from one book to another. I also really hate Perrin and Fael's relationship. They'll bounce back and forth from being lovey-dovey to horrible yelling at each other awful to being lovey-dovey again. And it didn't make any sense. Perrin's original reason to make Fael angry was to try to keep her away and keep her safe, which there are better ways to do that, but you could kind of see where he's coming from. But then when she's coming anyway, he keeps fighting with her for no reason whatsoever. And so they bicker and fight for no reason. Then they get to the village, and they just stop fighting, and Fael basically rolls over and plays dead, and just simpers and smiles at Perrin the whole book, and it just loses every shred of personality that she had. And then when they decide to get married, their whole marriage is built on this deception. Perrin was only agreeing to marry her because he was planning to die the next day, and he was trying to trick her and get her out of the way. And she only said that she would agree to everything and use marriage as a bargaining chip because she was trying to trick him in return and come back with reinforcements. So, they were happy that they were married at the end, and because they won the battle, they were so happy no one was thinking about it. But basically, their whole marriage was like this double con they were pulling on each other, and it doesn't seem like a great way to start a relationship. Though at least when Fael came back, she was leading troops and stuff, which is the first hint of personality she'd shown since she and Perrin made up when they got to the Two Rivers. Elaine and Rand's relationship was so boring. They just had very little chemistry, they seemed very bland, and how it came about was so terrible. Egwene and Elaine basically had this meeting where they decided who was going to get him, and then they basically tricked him into being with the person they wanted him to be with, and he even wondered, could they have planned this? No one would be that devious. But they absolutely were. They weren't giving him really any choice, they were just deciding his future without him in it. And it just could have been handled a lot better. And Rand was fine with Elaine. He didn't really mind her. He liked her. But he definitely doesn't feel the same way about her that she feels about him. She is in love with him and wants to marry him. And he keeps saying, oh, I like her, but I don't like her any more than I like, say, Min. I wonder how Min is doing. And I don't remember him getting that much page time with Min. I don't remember their interactions, so I would really like to see some more of their interactions, because I know she is in love with him, though that is more based on visions than on actual time together, so I'd like to see them have some more time together. But then the pairing I actually like most for Rand right now is Afienda. I loved their dynamic when they were together out in the desert. And that is probably because she is the first girl Rand has been involved with that doesn't have any prophecies related to her. There's no, oh, you're destined to be together. Oh, you've been betrothed since childhood. Oh, we've always known you would be together. They actually just get a chance to hang out and flirt. And I like that so much, and I hope that they end up together, or at least that she becomes one of the members of his harem, or whatever is going to happen. I do think that the whole sister wives thing they introduced in this book is very interesting. You know, in our culture, when you hear about men with multiple wives, it's always very much for the service of the men, and the women are just kind of putting up with it, or at least that's how it's presented. In this book, they're saying that the women decide that they're friends and they don't want to fight over a man, so they get together and sit the man down and say, okay, we're both going to marry you, I hope you're okay with that. And it's much more their decision than his, which I can't decide if that's better or worse. Either way, it doesn't seem like everyone's getting a fair say in what happens. And I feel like this society then, if that's the case, should also have like a brother-husband thing going on, so that any combination of people can say, alright, we're all kind of in love with each other, let's work something out. This, I think, is supposed to sound better than like the polygamous societies that we're used to hearing about, but it doesn't. It just sounds different and still not quite okay, because one person still doesn't have any empowerment or any real say in what's happening. I was also confused by the Aiel couples. I thought from the last book that Bane and Chiad were a couple because of the way they were explaining standing up in front of their elders and saying they were more than just sisters. I thought that meant they were a couple, but apparently not, because now I guess Chiad is in love with Gaul, which is fine, I guess, but we didn't see them together at all. So if they were going to become a couple like that, I wish we could have seen them interact slightly or occasionally. Mostly we just saw them off in the corner from other characters' perspectives, and we didn't really get to see their dynamic ever. So then I was also fairly annoyed by Egwene and Moiraine and Almas and all of the women's circle of the Aiel Wastes. It felt like all of the characters just retreated into being, we're the women's circle, you can't come in, no boys allowed. And that was their one trait, and they were just going to sit there and have their private women's rules and learn their things and not talk to anyone else, and it felt like they were just kind of sidelined through most of the book. I did really enjoy the storyline of Perrin going back to the Two Rivers to save his village. I love that dynamic of, I've been away and I've learned so much and now I'm coming home. It kind of reminded me of the movie Brooklyn, where it's like you've been away from home and you've learned so many new things, and you don't really feel like you're that much more of a sophisticated or knowledgeable of a person, but because you have been out in the world and seen new things, you feel so fancy and sophisticated to all the people from your hometown. I love the whole dynamic where everyone kept calling Perrin Lord or General, and he kept saying, don't call me that, just like Rand was doing a couple books ago. And it was really funny to see that same dynamic back again. Though I didn't really like the message that this whole sequence had about how the people needed a king, and they'd been doing things kind of democratically this whole time, just figuring out as a people what was best for everybody, and it was good that Perrin had come back to train them how to follow one man, because they need one ruler to tell them how to live their lives. The people can't jointly figure it out and vote on things, they need one person to be in charge. I was also quite annoyed by Nynaeve and Elaine. They keep insisting that we can handle things on our own, we're big tough girls, but then they don't use any common sense, and they make the stupidest mistakes. when Aegyanin's men almost captured them. They were just wandering around the city, dressed completely incorrectly, with no bodyguards, no servants. They might as well have had giant targets on their backs, and they had no idea. And then Aegyanin did rescue them, and they took her back to their house, and just started chatting about how, oh, we're Aes Sedai, we can tell you all about the Aes Sedai. And Aegyanin had all kinds of questions. They were just happy to tell her all their secrets. It doesn't matter. She couldn't possibly be dangerous, or part of the Seanchan, who believe in defeating Aes Sedai and capturing everybody with collars. We don't have to be careful, do we? And maybe not tell her information that would make it easier for her to collar us? And she could have captured them, or killed them, or done anything. The only reason she didn't was because they were sort of likable, which proves that she is a much better person than they are, and I was rooting for her way more than them, because she not only has common sense, but also a sense of empathy, and she changed and learned to grow her views and see things differently, and so she was an awesome character, and these two idiots were really lucky they met her. I did love that even after they captured her, they had no idea what to do with her, so they just brought her along on the heist, and she got to tag along and help, and she stopped being a prisoner at some point, you know. It's just like, okay, she's clearly just along for the ride, and that was great. And I did think it was really cool to see Nynaeve fighting Mogadine, and it actually made sense that she could win, because everyone has been saying that Nynaeve is super powerful, she just has no control. And they were locked in this battle of the wills, so Nynaeve was more powerful, she was able to win. But she's also much more ignorant and untrained, so she wasn't able to hold Mogadine, and she escaped. Though I do think it is absolutely ridiculous that they're sending the collar off to be dropped into the bottom of the ocean. They're not even going to do it themselves, they're just going to trust someone else to do it. And that is definitely not going to work. It's definitely going to end up in enemy hands, and I can't believe they're being so stupid again. I did really enjoy Min's section of the book. I thought her disguise at the White Tower was hilarious. It was great to see her being this simple, simpering little girl, and how perfect of a disguise that was for her. And I loved it that when the whole coup happened and there was battle, she didn't try to like rush in and do something stupid. She just hid and stayed safe and smart and waited until the dust had settled before she did something. Though I will say, I finished the 4th book and I can still not tell Gawain and Galad apart. Their names are so similar, they're brothers, and their personalities are kind of similar. I know that the older one is the one who believes in doing what's right so much that he isn't kind, I guess, and the younger one is the self-sacrificing one who is too kind to speak up for himself. But in practice, those two traits blend in a lot, and I can never remember which one is which, and usually I don't figure out which one was talking until the scene is over. I did think seeing the Amyrlin deposed was very interesting. You know, Min had warned her that her prophecies always come true, but the Amyrlin just brushed it off and, oh, I'm sure we can change it. We can definitely work against it. And it was also really interesting that even though she was deposed and stilled and all this stuff happened, they still didn't find out that she had been working for Rand this whole time. They just were kind of annoyed with her, and so they kicked her out. They didn't have any idea that how much she'd been working behind the scenes to put Rand in power. And I was pretty surprised that she was the one who was stilled. Earlier in the book they mentioned that there was no record anywhere in history of a stilled Aes Sedai getting her powers back. So then I knew that at some point in the series, probably an Aes Sedai was going to be stilled and have her powers come back to her, but I was expecting it would be like Egwene or one of the many kidnapped. So it was interesting to have it be the Amyrlin scene, and have it happen right away. And I am guessing that she will manage to get her powers back. But in the meantime, it's very interesting to see how she functions in a world without them. And I do find it pretty hilarious that most of the world takes for granted that Aes Sedai can't lie. But members of the Black Ajah can lie because they have oaths that supersede their Aes Sedai oaths. And then Elaine and Egwene and Nynaeve are all running around pretending to be Aes Sedai, and so they can lie because they haven't actually taken the oaths. And now the Amyrlin Seat and her assistant have been stilled, so they can lie. And all these people can still run around and pretend, oh, we definitely can't lie, you can trust us. And they can lie as much as they want. So I'm thinking that pretty soon most of the population will catch up and stop trusting that Aes Sedai can't lie, because most of the ones that we know can. So my favorite character in this book was Mat, which is really cool because he annoyed me so much for the first couple of books. And now he's just so much fun to be around. I loved how he kept walking through the ter'angreal doorway doorways and completely ignoring the rules, asking more questions than he was allowed to, yelling at the snake people and the different people who lived in the doorways, and just completely ignoring all the rules and doing whatever he wanted. And it was kind of hilarious the way the girls set him up. From the moment they mentioned this special secret doorway that's so dangerous, you just knew he was going to go down there. And either the girls set him up intentionally, or they are just really, really stupid and didn't realize that that's the first place that he would go. And it is really cool, all the things he remembers now that didn't even happen to him, and all the strategic military knowledge he has. It kind of reminds me of Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer after he gets that military knowledge, and suddenly he's just this regular teenage boy, but now he knows all about this cool military stuff. And then I really love how whenever Rand and Matt are interacting with each other, Rand still feels like a human. Because Rand can be a kind of a dull and boring character. He has so much weight and responsibility. And it's really nice to see him just having fun and hanging out and being a normal person. And the fact that he likes Matt, who is so lighthearted and fun-spirited, kind of makes Rand seem lighthearted too. And that was good because we didn't spend a lot of time inside Rand's head in this book. We did spend more time with him than in the previous book, but he still was mostly just being very quiet and not revealing his plans. And so we didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time with him. I'm hoping in future books we will get to focus on his character a bit more. I did think his final battle was sort of coherent. It seems like the final battles in these books range from being fairly obscure and difficult to follow to being more engaging and interesting. And I'd say this one was sort of a medium. I knew the general gist of what was happening. They were running around, they were smashing the city, and I loved it that the Forsaken Asmodean has been unforsook. He's no longer Forsaken, and now he's just going to be like Rand's pet Gleeman, who is going to run around and teach him how to use the One Power, and I cannot wait to see how this works out in future books. Not as many of the girls got kidnapped in this book. Nynaeve and Elaine were almost kidnapped before Egyanin saved them, so I'll add half a point each to their kidnap counter. And then at the end of the book, they kidnapped Egyanin, so now she's going to have a point on the kidnap counter as well. Then Siuan and Lyanna were both captured and stilled at the Battle of the White Tower, and Moghedien and Asmodean were both captured as well, so I guess Forsaken can be on the kidnap counter too. So this is the kidnap counter as it stands now. So I like this book. Some stuff annoyed me, mostly like relationship and gender politics stuff, but like as far as the action and the world building goes, I had a great time in this world. I'm loving envisioning their clothes, though I still haven't figured out the skirt split for writing mystery. I have looked this up, I've researched, and historically the first skirt split for writing were kind of Victorian era, and this book doesn't feel Victorian at all, though I have looked, and some blogs that I've found say that the clothing for this time period is kind of more Victorian than medieval, which is sort of weird, but I guess this series is going to be adapted into a TV show, so maybe they will find a good answer to the skirts divided for riding thing. And when they do, I will definitely have to make a pair and wear them. So I had fun with this book, and I am off to read the next one.